My name is Abdel Ghani Barre with Metro Social Services. I welcome you to this great forum of community working together. As part of Metro Social Services effort in strategic planning and research, as you will hear today, we have a distinguished panel that will address some of the issues that we help would advance the economic and social well-being of those that are left behind. As you all notice it, in the last 10 years since the recession ended, Nashville has experienced tremendous economic growth and a record lowest unemployment rate that this city has ever seen. However, that economic growth has not been shared in every corner of this town. It's our goal to engage the community, all of us, public, private, nonprofits, foundations, and philanthropy, and businesses to establish a vision that would address the economic and social well-being of our residents. Again, I welcome you to this forum, and I hope you stay engaged. As you are entering into the building, we gave you 3 items, I hope. There is the blue sheet, which has the agenda. There is an index card that's intended for you guys to write down any questions that you have for the panel. Please use that index card while the panel is having a discussion. Some of us will be collecting those index cards. So during the Q&A session for the panel, we will pass those index cards to the moderator. Again, I welcome you to the situation. Also, you have a white sheet that has the survey. Please understand, the survey is not about this event, it's not about social services, but it's about Nashville's ability to create opportunities for economic mobility. Feel free to write it down. It's intended for us to collect that information, organize it, report it to the Metro Council, and also we share with you the results. So I hope I made clear everything that we need to do while we are here. Again, I welcome you to this great event, and thank you for coming.
My name is Carter Crenshaw, and I'm the founding pastor here at West End Community Church. And the first thing I'd like to say is it is a real privilege to have all of you to be here at the church. We're just delighted to be able to host this event and to really share and learn a whole lot from you as we as a church seek to really partner with Metro Social Services in the mission to reach marginalized people and really care for them. And I do want to thank Metro Social Services for all that you do. I've lived in Nashville a long time, and I'm just delighted to be in such a great city. And I think social services is such a great part of that. And so we're so grateful to be able to partner with you this morning too. Part of our core mission as a church is to love our neighbor. Our particular faith community is really committed to that. If you'll see the location of this church, we're in a very, very, I believe, important area and have really great opportunities. And just a few years ago, the Lord really blessed us to be able to start a ministry called Uprise. And it's really expanded the vision of this church. And I think really grown the heart of this church. And this meeting this morning is just another step in that. And I cannot tell you, again, I want to tell you what a blessing it is to be among people who are caring and caring for people who need to be cared for. And I would just really like to say it's an honor to be here to learn from you and to learn with you this morning. Again, thank you for coming.
Good morning. I'm Renee Pratt, Executive Director of Metro Social Services. Again, welcome to this event today. Thank you, Pastor Crenshaw and the church for hosting this event. I'd like to take this opportunity to recognize any elected officials in the congregational audience at this time, and also any of our board members of Metro Social Services. Thank you so much for being here today. This is a really important event, our very first after the release of the Community Needs Evaluation, and hopefully you'll see more events and forums like this to express the direction social services is moving in. At this time, we were expecting the Deputy Mayor to be with us, but I believe she's running a bit late. So we're going to move on through the program, and then when she comes in, we will bring her up. Thank you so much.
Again, thank you for coming. I would like to introduce you to Dr. Garrett Harper of Metro Social Services.
Thank you all so much for being here today, and it's a pleasure to share with you some data as an introduction to the discussion which we'll be having, the exploration of these important ideas today. As you've heard, and as many of you have been a part of over the years, the Community Needs Evaluation has been produced for the past 10 years as a way of fulfilling the mission of Metropolitan Social Services. As a part of that, we've shared the findings around poverty, how it's changed, how economic hardship has been a factor in our community, and precisely how that has changed and shaped our community through the years. In the doing of that, we've had an opportunity to learn, to reflect, to build an understanding of what those changes have meant, but at the same time, there's been tremendous change that has occurred in the community that has exacerbated in some cases, but intensified the need to even further understand what those patterns and trends have been. So the lessons, the observations, the realizations, and also the conclusions, and from those, we know that there has been a great deal that has been learned about poverty, but also a great deal more to learn in the years ahead and in ways that we'll be discussing in today's forum. Here, as you see, for instance, poverty initiatives, many of the great work that has gone on through the organizational capacity all throughout the Nashville area, the many initiatives, the many plans, the many programs, and certainly the services that are provided, such as the ones that you've already heard about, that are addressing the needs of Nashvillians. All of those important, but going forward to understand even more what the nature of poverty is. And there we may reflect on there being this gap in knowledge, in understanding, in response, and out of those things, a gap in direction going forward. That there is more to understand in the depth, the magnitude, the persistence, and importantly, the structures that make poverty what it is and perpetuate it across time, past, present, and hopefully not future. You see a quote here that's from the Federal Reserve System. Year after year, they do survey work around the country to determine the difficulty that households face in coming up with, in this case, $400. And their finding in the most recent year was that 40% of American adults, 4 out of 10, would have great difficulty in finding $400 for an emergency and would be prompted to borrow or to, in some measure, go into debt in order to do that. So as we consider poverty levels in the mid-teen range, nationally and locally, we realized here that 40%, or 4 out of 10 adults, face difficulty for even a minor hardship that may come their way. As Abdul Ghani mentioned, we've had 10 years of extraordinary growth. The economy of Nashville and the Nashville region is like no other in the country in so many important ways. We see here identified in the most recent calendar year a 2.6% unemployment rate in Davidson County. Extraordinarily low. Economists will remind us that 4 out of 100 persons, 4%, is full employment. At any given point, there will be 2 or 3 persons voluntarily between jobs. That's the point that we're at in Nashville and Davidson County. At the same time, we see the poverty measures. The numbers, not the percentage, but the numbers from 2005 and the numbers of persons living in poverty in Davidson County in 2018. And we notice there that in that dozen years or so of economic change and economic growth, the numbers of persons experiencing poverty has risen by 25,000. And in 2018, for the first time in 3 years, it rose above 100,000 yet again. We also see there at the bottom of this that 200,000 persons, or approximately a third of the residents of Nashville, live below the 200% threshold of poverty. So the hardship is widespread. And from this, we also then conclude that with economic growth come jobs, education to prepare for jobs, but in important ways, jobs and education alone won't end financial hardship for households, families, and individuals. Instead, poverty is very multifaceted. Increasingly, we hear and are reminded of the growth in student debt that many experience, retirement needs for an aging population, child care costs that many face, low wages, where in the 50 most numerous occupations in the area, more than half of those can't afford a fair market rent, transportation costs, health, housing costs, all impacting households and their ability to make ends meet. That has led, in fact, to a shift in the patterns of migration into our area. We're in a very attractive area to newcomers from around the country, from around the world, and that's long been so. But if we isolate Davidson County and look simply at the migration pattern in and out of Davidson County, based on census data, we see that we have had in-migration for many, many years, but over the past 3 years, we have had a net out-migration. And that changed, that pivoted, so that in fact in the most recent year we have approximately 7 persons a day moving out of Davidson County. We're experiencing population growth because of natural increase. We are seeing singles and childless couples moving in, but we know also that families who are cost burdened are exiting Davidson County, and we see that across a sustained pattern that has held now for 3 years. The nature of work is also changing, not only in Nashville or in Tennessee or the country, but in the industrialized countries of the world. Skills and earnings are different in very important ways. They're polarizing, those with low skill and lower earnings, those with higher skill and higher earnings that come with that. A bifurcation of this, a skewing of those patterns and trends, altering how we think about the nature of work going forward in dramatic ways, and a reshaping of the workforce. That's led then as well to what economist Raj Chetty from Harvard has identified in recent years as the fading American dream. That we see in this graph on the horizontal axis, the child's year of birth, beginning in the 1940s on through the 1980s, those who are now young adults born in the 1980s. On the vertical axis, the percentage of children who earn more than their parents. If we look back to those who were born in the 1940s or 1950s, there was a high likelihood that those children, when they came to be young adults and earners, would earn more than their parents. Here we note that that was at 80 or 90%. 8 or 9 out of every 10 young persons would earn more than their parents. That began to change particularly in the 1960s, the 70s, and continues to decline so that now only about half of young earners can expect to earn more than their parents earned. We also see the spatial display of that across the country. This is also work that's been produced by the Harvard economic group that is looking at this. In this map, we see the entire United States and the counties identified. The red indicates that for those children that grew up in a household where the earnings were about $27,000 a year, the ones that are in red tell us those are the places where the children, when they grow up to be earners, earn about $27,000 a year. Those in the other colors indicate there is a higher level of earnings, but you'll notice a particular clustering of that effect in the Southeast and in our region. Another way of looking at that are to examine some of the cities that were shown in that map that were represented there, and that is pointing here to Nashville. The horizontal axis here shows job growth rate in the 1990s and in the 2000s, a span of 20 years. The vertical axis shows, again, the children's mean household earnings for parents who were in the 25th percentile, the lower earning cohort of households. We see that Nashville is fairly far over to the right, meaning that there was rapid job growth during that 20-year period. There has been even more rapid job growth in the years since, as shown in this graph. But we also notice that Nashville is in the lower half in the vertical axis, which means that we're not performing very well in terms of children outperforming their parents. In fact, out of 2,700 counties that were examined, 2,700 counties in the country, not all because some are very small, but the 2,700 counties, Davidson County ranks in the bottom 150 for those where there is that type of a mobility out of low earning. It's 146 that we rank out of 2,700. So there is renewed interest and new interest in understanding mobility and focusing on that, how intergenerational mobility can become a greater reality, because there are differences across the country, and how to learn from those places where that thrives and does well. So this recent research is shifting attention on poverty to income mobility and to the role of childhood environment. Where someone grows up is vitally important to their likelihood of performing well as an adult, and the evidence here shows those things. As well, key findings from that tell us and remind us from the Nashville story that a booming economy does not necessarily lead to increased upward mobility for local children, and that growing up in a higher mobility area does have an important causal effect on children's outcomes in adulthood. Which points then to place, the importance of investing in place so that the experiences of young persons is a strong one and identifies with those areas of opportunity that have produced greater mobility across time. Equitable investment, be that in education, land use, transportation, health, and housing. All of those things contribute to the performance of adults as they become earners based on their childhood experience. As well, many of you represent organizations that are in a serving capacity to those in financial hardship and financial need. That remains so, will remain so. But addressing the needs of persons experiencing fragility, economic fragility, where extreme hardship has befallen the population, isn't the solution that we look to in the long future. Rather, to achieve a greater level of stability so that it's not a period of crisis, but even more importantly, to move to mobility so that the next generation performs better than the one previously. The answer then for this may not be more programs. There are many programs in place, and many that are serving capably and importantly to those needs that many face, the 100,000 plus in Davidson County below the 100% threshold of poverty. But also to think about what works. When research is pointing to those areas where there are greater levels of economic mobility, what's working in those places, and what can continue to work in places where that's not happening? Using analysis thoughtfully and clearly and purposefully is a way to understand that better, to expand the research into that topic. And the result of that would be a greater effectiveness and a greater efficiency in serving. Certainly in all of these dimensions, we care about the bottom line. That bottom line that's effective, that's sustainable, that's one that's demonstrated out of research, and yes, that also is cost effective and cost efficient. the bottom line does matter, not only in cost, but in result, and result for mobility. Solutions then may be pointing in some new directions, those directions being ones of economic mobility and understanding what economic and social well-being are, as the mission of Metropolitan Social Services is focused on empowering and understanding those factors at work in the population of Nashville and Davidson County. So that as a vision of this is a part of understanding the dynamics of what we're experiencing and how that can alter into the future. If we take the different facets of life in Nashville, on the left hand, education, workforce, diversity, transportation, housing, human services, neighborhoods, and well-being, all of those things that constitute the life experience of young persons as they grow up, and then putting that through the lens of economic mobility for Nashville residents. How that can, how that will, how that would, how that should change how policies and programs perform that are aligned even more than they currently are, that are coherent, that are effective, efficient, that are grounded in evidence, that are informed by community members and community organizations, that are suited to the very unique needs of Nashville and its experience, and that are sustainable across time. As we think about the data that we could work with on this, a lot of terms are used with that. Here, a lake, a pool, a stream, an ocean, a lagoon. There's a lot of data in the environment of big data. The question is not so much having the data and the understanding of persons experiencing financial hardship, but managing those and getting greater understanding from it, eliciting what the dynamic, the experience of persons who are moving through a service delivery system, those that may not be touched by the public or private sector but are experiencing financial need. This does identify then a role that big data, that analytics can play as we would perform more of this research. Analytics for social and economic well-being, just as all of us as consumers through our shopping in retail settings, our involvement with social media, being involved with use of credit cards, all of those things that we do as consumers, the private sector knows a great deal and uses information in capable ways and important ways to serve the consuming public. At the same time, the resident population interacts with the public sector. We may not know as much about the service roles, the path that individuals, households, and families take in interacting around topics of service for their economic needs. Learning from the user experience with the public sector. Learning from the patterns and trends that are in place from that, and even predictive analytics so that we can anticipate those things that work and how we can put those into place and what will be the result out of those if done well. So as we consider each of these results in so many ways coming from the work of 10 years of the community needs evaluation and looking at the experience of Nashville over the decade during that same time, we know that much very positive and good has occurred in Nashville. At the same time, there are many who are struggling financially, and even recently the number increasing. That economic growth alone isn't enough. Jobs and education alone aren't enough for changing that dynamic of economic mobility. The things that we know about economic mobility are becoming more powerful. That work that's identified in those maps and graphs that's done at a national level for the entire country gives us an opportunity as a living laboratory to learn from those and implement those in the Nashville area. And to do that, to take that data and perform analysis that is purposeful, that is applied to the needs that are here, and that draws from different disciplines, be it economics or social work or geography or public administration. Every discipline has something to contribute as insights into the dynamic of well-being and mobility. And lastly, done well, continuing then to be equitable in our public investments, that better understanding through the research what works allows us to then implement those things that work. We're pleased to initiate the conversation, the exploration today of what a 21st century approach to economic mobility may be like. So invite you to continue to complete any questions that you may have for our panel as they present to us some of their thoughts, and then we'll have an opportunity for questions and answers. I'd like now to turn the program back over to Abdul Ghani Barre.
Before I introduce you to the panel, please remember you have index cards, and that's intended for you to write your questions while the panel is having the discussion, and we'll pick up those and then pass to the moderator when it comes to the Q&A session. At this time, I would like to introduce you to the panel members and our moderator. First, we have Dr. Ken Chilton, professor at Tennessee State University, who will be our moderator.
Yeah. All right, thank you. One bit of housekeeping for those who are looking for a wireless network. The wireless password is WECCS Wireless, all lower cap letters, so you can live tweet the event. I'm sure you're all going to help us out there. Yeah, I'd like to introduce our panel and get started with the question portion of our event. First is Danielle Barnes, the Commissioner of the Tennessee Department of Human Services. Danielle, if you could come up, please. Tari Hughes, the CEO of the Center for Nonprofit Management, is with us. Dr. Doug Perkins, the Peabody College of Vanderbilt University. Yeah, wherever you're comfortable. Brian Hassett, CEO of the United Way of Middle Tennessee. And Carol Peterson, Uprise, West End Community Church. So each member will give a brief overview of their organization before we get to the questions, so you can have a better idea of what they're doing in the community. So in any order, I'll just go in the order that I introduce folks. Danielle, if you could just give us a brief overview.
Sure. I can screen.
Yeah, if I can get this out of here.
First of all, good morning. That's better. Thank you to Pastor Crenshaw and the church. This is a beautiful hidden gem here in Nashville. I had no idea this was here, and I'm always thrilled to find new gems in our city, and to Metro Social Services to continue to keep doing the work that you all do. It's very important, and the reason that I am so honored to be here today, it's because this is a conversation that I'm engaged with every single day. As the Commissioner of the Department of Human Services, we serve about 2 million Tennesseans across the state. And I have the pleasure of traveling east to west. In fact, was in Robertson County yesterday, looking at some of the storm damage, and to see some of the struggles that our citizens go through every day is something I'm very passionate about. But even more than that, there's a population of people, and this is, I think, the message that you all were given this morning. There's a huge population of people who are not our clients, they're not our customers, they're not on our rolls, but that does not mean that they're thriving. And that doesn't mean that we ought to forget about them, and it doesn't mean that we ought to say, okay, they're fine, they're working, they have a job. And we have a responsibility to lift our neighbors, to lift all of our citizens so that we as a state can be even stronger. That's what gets me up, and that's what gets me going every day. When I see folks like you all in the room that are working together, and some of our partners sitting here at the table working together to lift those communities, That's why we exist. That's why we do what we do every day, and that's why I run to work. So when you think about the Department of Human Services across the state, we do have a very large breadth of programs. We do offer supplemental nutrition assistance program. We also offer child care. Most people don't know that we have child care, both licensure and certificate. Child support, vocational rehabilitation is another untapped resource, as well as our temporary assistance to needy families. It's really important that when we think about the customers that we serve and those that we are lifting along with us, for us, we've changed our conversation over the last couple of years to let employers know that this is an untapped resource. So as we work with employers and we work with our customers, we're not just trying to find jobs, we're trying to find sustainable jobs. And we're trying to provide that wraparound services for every person that we come into contact with. When we think about the population that we serve, I think it's important as we set the stage. It runs right in line with a little bit about what you heard this morning. Our TANF rolls have decreased almost 60% over the last 5 years. That's an important figure because I think generally people think that the economy is better and people are coming off of our rolls. And I would like to believe that that's true. I would like to believe that that's the case. However, what I also know is that as government, we have worked really hard to make things really hard. So when you come into our offices, you've got a litany of paperwork that you've got to fill out, and there is a general mistrust of government. So over the last couple of years, we've really tried to change our approach to, I think you all have heard me speak here before. I've spoken the last couple of years on our two-generation approach. This approach is really important because what we're trying to do is serve people where they are, break down the mistrust of government, and to really help people just thrive in the places where they live. And so it's partners like these, and I'm excited. I want you all to hear from them because we know that individuals feel more comfortable going into the United Way. And I'm going to point to Brian because he's a huge partner of ours, doing great things, nationally recognized, so I'm going to set you up really well. But at the same token, they're going to go to United Way. They feel more comfortable with United Way. The services are there. The outcomes are there. And that's what's most important. And we can really begin to lift people, and we can begin to lift people together and communities together. So as we talk a little bit today, I just want to set the stage for this is not about government alone. We're not in this to say we have the cure to ending poverty. We don't. We don't have the cure for building strong communities. But what we do have the cure for is bringing people to the table, for getting people to lean in, for collecting all of those resources and pulling them together and wrapping our arms around families and communities. Because we know when we do that, families will then succeed. Families will thrive, communities will thrive, and Tennessee will be lifted. So that's just a quick overview of DHS.
All right, thank you.
Thanks. Hi, I'm Terry Hughes, and I'm with the Center for Nonprofit Management, and we are a capacity building organization. We are a member organization, so agencies join us. We have a little over 800 agencies in Middle Tennessee. Most of them are in Davidson County or in the surrounding that join us. And we provide services to help those agencies do their jobs better and fulfill their missions. We like to say we amplify the impact of nonprofits and their partners. In the last few years, we have expanded what it means to serve the nonprofit sector in a couple of ways. I'm sure you've heard the phrase collective impact. We have embraced collective impact very much at the center. We believe that there's not any one nonprofit that can solve poverty, that can make all the third graders read at third grade level at the end of third grade. Not one of us can do that by ourselves. It takes us working together, and it takes us working, to Danielle's point, beyond the nonprofit sector and doing cross-sector work. And so we are working very closely with initiatives that are collaborative, collective impact initiatives to help them go farther faster. We aren't selecting the topics, but we are helping foster the success. And Brian can talk about the recent award that United Way had at the Salute to Excellence, where we honored 2 of those initiatives. One is the Nashville Adult Literacy Collaborative, and the winner of the award was the ACE Nashville group. And so those are just 2 examples of the kind of groups that we're fostering and helping. One of the things that has come out of our collective impact work is a much closer and deeper focus on the importance of equity. What we find and what we have found is that often as this work is happening, those that are to benefit from the work are sometimes not consulted as closely as need to be. And so the importance of going into the community and making sure that the solutions are co-created and making sure that that everybody's voice is heard and at the table. So equity is another place that we are really focusing and feel it is imperative in order to come up with solutions that are really going to move the needle. I could tell you so much more, but I'm going to turn it over to Carol.
Good morning. My name is Carol Peterson. I'm the Executive Director of Uprise Nashville. I want to welcome you all once again to West End Community Church. It is really a privilege for me to be here and to be talking with and about so many people in our community who are doing so much to bring awareness to poverty alleviation. I spent more than 10 years as a federal prosecutor in Los Angeles, and it was really through that lens, prosecuting violent crime, that my heart was changed to want to help alleviate poverty as I saw the impact that material poverty had on so many people, on individuals, on their families, on their communities. And so it is really the issue of poverty and the findings that the United Way has with Alice, the statistics related to unemployment in our community, that are the reason that Uprise Nashville exists. Inspired by the vision of Acts 4 in the New Testament, where church leadership and the rich and the poor all came together to eliminate poverty in their midst, Uprise Nashville was formed as a way to reach out to people in our community in a meaningful way. We knew that we could help someone pay rent one month, we could do a canned food drive, and those things are really important, but they're helping people in poverty. They're not helping people get out of poverty. So Uprise Nashville exists to help people get the education and training they need, not just to get a job, but to get on a career path with upward mobility. And our Uprise model is pretty simple. Find people who face barriers to employment, who face unemployment, and then we look for people who don't just need help, we look for people who want help. We then recruit a community volunteer called an ally who walks alongside and supports each one of our students throughout that process. We get them training and skills in areas of vocational need in Nashville, and then we help place them in a job with upward mobility. And our first class started right here at the church in October of 2017 with something we call Training Camp. It's a class that focuses mostly on the skills that get you hired, things like writing a resume or how to interview well, and then also the things that get you fired, things like conflict resolution and time management. Then our students started going to school, and they started going to school at places all over Nashville to obtain short-term certifications in skills where there's areas of vocational need. And they went to school and got certifications for things like commercial driver's license, office administration, medical assisting, and information technology. When they graduated with those certifications, we helped them get jobs. And today they're working at places like Vanderbilt, St. Thomas, PhiMed, Assurian, and Google. And our goal is for our students to get skills and training that lead to a career path. As the saying goes, a journey of 1,000 miles always starts with a single step. And so for us, it's exciting to see where that path takes our students once they start on the journey. Our student Chelsea came to Uprise looking for a better life for herself and her 2 daughters after she fled an abusive relationship. She was living in a shelter. She had no job prospects, but she was one of the most determined individuals I've ever met. She made it through the Uprise program, and we helped her get a job at Asurian, and we celebrated with her. And then after just a couple of months, Chelsea went to a meeting that Asurian asked her to attend, and she met a gentleman there from Google. And after some additional conversation and 4 rounds of interviews, Chelsea was named the next project manager at Google. And she went to San Francisco earlier this year for her orientation. She and her daughters are already soundly within that mobility phase that Dr. Harper talked about. They're living in a 3-bedroom home, and if you ask Chelsea today, her goal is to continue to build her career at Google while also going back to school to complete her undergraduate degree. It is expensive for us to do this work. We invest about $10,000 to $15,000 per individual to get them on a path to self-sufficiency. But based on the employment numbers so far, this investment is completely repaid within the very first year that our students start to work. In fact, they are making more than $20,000 a year than when they started Uprise. This is not a payment that's just dollar for dollar, and that number doesn't even include their benefits, things like health care, vacation time, or stock options. We just finished a retention study of our very first class that graduated a year ago, and I'm excited to tell you that when they started, students in our Uprise class received, 72% of them received food stamps. And today, just 9% of our graduates receive food stamps. When they started at Uprise, 55% were receiving a housing subsidy, and today just 27% receive a subsidy. We believe that this kind of impact has a ripple effect on our communities, on individuals and on their families, and also on the businesses that are employing newly skilled, vetted employers. The impact is exponential. Thank you.
Good morning. My name's Doug Perkins, and I'm trained as a community psychologist and teach at Vanderbilt University. So what's a community psychologist? Despite what it sounds like, it's not putting communities on the couch and shrinking everybody's heads. It's basically the psychological study and solution to community-based problems and working collaboratively with local governments and communities to solve those problems. And the question was how our organization is addressing economic mobility. And I should start by saying, well, at the level of Vanderbilt, my institution, it's the largest private organization of any kind, for-profit or nonprofit, in Middle Tennessee, and the second largest in the state. So it affects economic mobility in Nashville in a lot of ways. First, by employing over 23,000 people, including the Vanderbilt Medical Center. If you add to that all of our graduate students who are both employees as well as students, but do a lot of the good work in our program in communities, research and consultation, et cetera, not just faculty like myself, the number's well over 25,000. Secondly, because of the size of Vanderbilt, it sort of sets the curve when it comes to a lot of employment decisions beyond Vanderbilt. It's so large that things like, I wish that our wage and salary structures were even higher, other than for the highest administrators and our coaches and our highest paid doctors. They could probably stand with making a little less, but it has grown faster than most other employers locally as far at the starting wage and salary structure. So that's important. Our benefits are pretty good, health benefits for all employees from bottom to top. But another benefit I think is especially relevant to economic mobility, and that is the benefit of tuition contribution by Vanderbilt to dependents, not just for faculty, but for all employees at Vanderbilt University. I'm a little bit afraid they may be over time phasing that benefit out. For example, I'm not sure whether when in recent years the medical center legally split from the university, it's possible that maybe some of you know, the med center, I'm not sure, continues that benefit, but it's a really good one that I've benefited from myself for our daughter. So There are also, third, a lot of spin-off economic benefits from Vanderbilt, with students staying in Nashville after they graduate to work and to start businesses, and faculty and researchers at the own medical discoveries and other research discoveries leading to new businesses and technologies. And then closer to home, I'm at Peabody College, as you can see, which has assisted Metro schools through teacher and leader training and research for over 100 years. In fact, Peabody College is the oldest institution of higher learning in all of Middle Tennessee, tracing its roots back to the late 1700s, believe it or not. Davidson Academy was the first school, and it led to ultimately to Peabody College, which only merged with Vanderbilt in 1979. A lot of people think it's always been part of Vanderbilt, but it's a relatively recent thing. And so Peabody's been important, and my department is called Human and Organizational Development within Peabody, and our graduate programs that I helped start when I came here 19 years ago include an applied research PhD program called Community Research and Action, and a more professionally focused master's program called Community Development and Action. And so our teaching, our research, student internships and projects, all kind of are geared toward that collaborative effort to work with local government, work with local communities and nonprofit organizations to address not just poverty and economic mobility, but all sorts of problems. I mentioned being a community psychologist, and really I've spent my whole career, the last 33 years, in different kinds of interdisciplinary programs and departments, which I'm going to get back to in response to a later question. But I started out in criminal justice at Temple University in Philadelphia, then spent 11 years in a department called Family and Consumer Studies at the University of Utah before coming here. In each of these places, I really am a firm believer that we, as academics, need to get off campus, first of all, and working collaboratively, as I say, with local institutions and communities, but also get out of our disciplinary silos, as it were, and to kind of become more transdisciplinary, creating new knowledge and new ideas and intervention strategies that bring the best strengths from each discipline. And so I'll end this first response by noting that my department, again, Human and Organizational Development, has a mission statement, and I'll only read, it's not long, but I'll just read the second half of it, in which our faculty, staff, and students strive to hold each other accountable to promote people's rights, dignity, learning, and growth, relationships based on caring and respect, communities of inclusion and support, and societies built on democratic participation, justice, and equality. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Brian Hassett from the United Way, but the real brains of the United Way are sitting right back here in the Community Impact Department. I think most of them are here today. And you probably know, if you don't know, you should know Erica Mitchell and Mary Jo Wiggins and our group. I'm here about 2 years, and this is a unique opportunity for United Way. I've worked for United Ways in 10 different cities around the United States, and what is unique here is that we have direct access to people like Commissioner Barnes and the Mayor's Office and the CEO at Bridgestone Americas and HCA. It is unique. I've been around. The fact that we all kind of pull together to try to make things better really gives us the leverage to make things better for individual people. And that's our mission. Our mission is to unite the community and mobilize resources so that every child, family, and individual has a chance to thrive, so that people who need help get the help they need, and when they need it, and where they can get it easily. And that's been a big change. I think the other unique thing I see in Nashville is the willingness of the not-for-profit community to work together. And just last week, we had Peter Buffett here. Peter is Warren Buffett's youngest son. And he's on a tour of cities thinking about his philanthropy. His father did not give him money. He inherited very little money, mostly from his grandfather. His father did give him $1 billion to invest in charities around the world. And he came here to see the Magruder Center in North Nashville. Now, if you know that zip code, it happens to be the zip code with the highest incarceration rate of men in America. And I happen to live in that zip code. It's a tale of two worlds. The neighborhood has changed since I've been there. I'm in an apartment in Germantown. But what the Magruder Center has done, and if you haven't met Alicia Haddock, this is a Wonder Woman who takes care of people. And you get everything you need at Magruder Center, because Catholic Charities is in there, MNPS is in there, the United Way is in there, and a number of corporations have supported the enterprise so that things that the children and the families and the elders that live in that neighborhood need, get it where they can. So there's actually a city court in there now. There's a sewing workforce development program that you'd be amazed at how successful they are at getting people good paying jobs in Nashville in the sewing industry. There's a hotel room there that is used to train people for the hotel industry. There's a restaurant training program. It really works. The 2-gen focus on homelessness that Commissioner Barnes supports with us and Catholic Charities and Safe Haven and Salvation Army and others is making a difference as well, significant difference. I'm on the mayor's continuum of care for homelessness now, and there are a lot of difficult issues. A lot of difficult issues, but people are pulling together. And I think that's what we have a chance to do here, maybe more of. We mentioned the Alice report, and I'm not going to go into the details, but one of the things we've tried to do at the United Way is really define poverty. So according to the federal government, a family of 4, it's $24,000. An individual, it's somewhere around $11,000 or $12,000. There's no way you're going to make it. Our study of working people and working poor includes 600 United Ways around the country in 17 states. And basically what we've discovered is that a survival budget for a family of 4, 2 adults, 1 preschooler, 1 child, really requires a $25 an hour salary. That's what it requires. That's a survival budget. The daycare costs alone are about $1,100 a month. So and I heard the earlier Abdul Ghani, people are one disaster away from terrible things, from homelessness. You get a flat tire, you can't get to work. You make a choice about paying your rent rather than food. These are the choices that people are being forced to make. So we've left copies of the summary of the study in the back. We do hope it will help us educate our legislators about what poverty is, what it means. It's EMTs, it's nurses, it's the guys at Publix checking you out. It's people that keep this economy going who need a break. And so collectively we can, if we focus together, if we partner together, like I think we've started to see happen, we can make it. We can make a big difference in people's lives here.
Thank you. Moving forward, picking up on that theme of collaboration and what Garrett talked about in terms of economic mobility and some of the challenges there. Briefly, within 2 or 3 minutes, because we are going to take audience questions here in a little bit. So if something you want to ask write it down and get it to one of the people collecting that. So we'll have time at the end. So in 2 or 3 minutes, from your perspective, we've heard about the growth and the prosperity in Nashville, but it hasn't trickled down. With what you're seeing with the people you work with, what are the major problems? What are the major challenges?
Okay. There's quiet here. I don't know why. I think we all have our unique perspective. One of the things that's been so important to us over the years, and I think you heard this a little bit earlier, is we have to get out and we have to talk to people. Especially for government, it's been sort of a misnomer of we think we know what you need, but we've never really asked people. And as we've been getting out and we've been visiting our communities and we've been doing customer events and talking to folks, the number one thing that we continue to hear, whether it's Nashville or whether it's any other community across the state of Tennessee, there's really two, well, there's three. It's housing, no big surprise. It's transportation, again, not a big surprise. And the third one is childcare. I'm going to spend just a moment, I know I'm quick on time, but just a moment on childcare, because a lot of us are parents, and a lot of us know that frustration of having to, I always say I have the bat phone and I have my work phone, and if the bat phone rings, my entire executive functioning just shuts down. If I think something is wrong with my children, I can't focus on anything else. I don't have family here, but I've been very blessed with a community of people that have surrounded around us that have been my network, my social capital. We haven't necessarily developed that in today's society. And when we talk about childcare, there's a study that just came out recently from the Tennesseans for Quality Early Education, TQEE. And they noted that 35% of Tennesseans have had to take reduced hours or had their pay reduced because they didn't have sufficient child care. They've also noted that 32% either quit, they were demoted, or they were fired. 39%, so almost that's almost 40%, that's pretty high, turned down a job or a promotion because they did not have appropriate child care. And as part of their study, they noted that this was an annual economic loss of about $1.3 billion in Tennessee every year. So we have a workforce, we have a responsibility. Now, I will tell you from where I sit, child care has been just fine. We have been regulating, we've been working, but the world around us has changed dramatically. There are more children. The cost of childcare is higher, and it's not accessible, it's not affordable, and it's not quality. And from our lens, where we've really been spending time is how do we make that, especially in Nashville. Now, you would think in a city as big as Nashville that we would have plenty of options, but you would be surprised to know that Nashville, maybe you won't be surprised to know, Nashville is actually a childcare desert, meaning there are more children than there are slots for childcare. And we have an opportunity here to be able to provide incentives, to be able to begin to work with folks to help bolster some support and some of this collective impact, if you will, to be able to provide opportunities for our children to thrive in communities while our parents are supported and they can go to work. They have to know that their kids are in an environment that is safe and stable, and at the same time, be able to go and feel free and comfortable in knowing that they are safe in that environment. So from our lens, that's where we're going to spend the bulk of our time over the next couple of years, is working not just with individuals, but with businesses, and with families to really bolster that experience and the opportunity for childcare.
Okay, so I have a question about childcare. Because that's something that we think about a lot, and it is certainly an element in this. But what we're finding, because we have a lot of nonprofits who provide childcare, it is getting more and more expensive as a provider to provide quality childcare and to pay wages. And so I'm wondering about, are you going to be also working with the providers? Sorry, Ken.
So we've taken over. Yes, absolutely we are. There's a couple of incentives that actually just rolled out this month. One of them is, one of the things we know for sure is our child care educators are they're not paid very well. And these are the people who you leave your children with every single day. We've rolled out a program to be able to provide additional dollars to child care providers, as long as they want to continue to get higher education. We've also rolled out shared services to be able to have those smaller businesses need back office help and to be able to do some of those things in the back office. There are incentives as well. So if you're offering non-traditional hours, which we know is a big deal, not everybody works from 8 to 4:30 or 8 to 5. If you provide care in a non-traditional hour, you also get an incentive. We also increased the rate for child care certificate holders for the first time in over 20 years just this year. So when I tell you things have just been stagnant, they've been fine, but we just haven't caught up to the world. And there's also, I'm really excited about this, and I'm just going to steal it for just a minute because we just rolled this one out. But there's an opportunity for mini grants, M-I-N-I. I'm very Tennessean, so I have to spell that out. Mini grants. So for anyone who wants to open a child care or who wants to enhance their services, has the opportunity to apply to our department to receive a grant for equipment or educational materials or anything that they need. We've also partnered with Nashville State to do a career, a business development college. So someone who wants to go into business that doesn't know how, we're going to give them the training that they need to be able to open their own child care center. So yes, they are at the table. They're telling us what they need. Parents are telling us what they need, and we are responding in kind. I'm just going to take this moment to say, and I'm going to jump ahead just a bit to say this is an exciting time. Now, I know this is a difficult topic, but it's an exciting time because there's an opportunity that we can all be jumping on. I've been here, I've been in this seat for 2.5 years, and I have never seen such positive momentum, not just from our partners, but from our parents, from the community, from our local government. I see some more of our providers out here. It's just even the federal government has said, go and innovate. And I encourage you all, if you take nothing else from this session today, to ask the question, what if? Ask the question, why? Ask the question, what if we could? And I guarantee if we start having that dialogue, instead of just thinking, oh no, we can't, if we start really having that dialogue, I am sure that doors will open. I am sure that we will begin to join together, and I am sure that we will begin to build stronger families. And I get a little passionate about this, and I get a little excited about it because it's because of you all. You all are boots on the ground. You all are seeing the communities. But if you're not following up with the questions of what if, then we're never going to make that positive momentum.
Give it to Brian.
I'm sorry.
I would say that in our program, what we have seen one of the greatest deficits to be is in the area of housing, and that probably comes as zero surprise to anyone in this room. But it's interesting because back in 2017, when we started Uprise, most of our students came from the metro area. And slowly over the course of the last 18 months, we've seen that change, and we have more and more and more students who are seeking less expensive housing by moving out to areas such as Antioch and Clarksville. And the result of that, from our perspective, is that they're moving to places that have fewer job opportunities for them, and they frequently find that then they're forced to at least commute in some capacity back to Nashville in order to try to be able to make a living wage. That causes an issue with regard to the cost of gas and an increased cost of living in that capacity. It causes increased wear and tear on their vehicles. It causes reduced hours that they're able to work because frequently their kids are in school or in childcare in Clarksville. And so that 8 or 9 hours that they have could become more like 6 or 7 to work by the time they make it back to their community. And so this is an area where we really focus. When our students come to us, we ask that they have stable housing. That doesn't mean that they own a home. It doesn't mean that their name is on a lease. It just means they have a stable place to lay their head at night because our program's too rigorous for them not to have a place to live. But stuff happens. It happens every class, and it happens repeatedly. And so what we have needed to do and have done is begun to set up partnerships both with private businesses and also with the government to help assist our leaders, our students, when they get into situations involving involving housing, where they have a loss of housing. But we've been fortunate in particular to have a relationship with Elmington Capital that has really been beneficial to us in placing our students into some sort of assisted housing when they find themselves in a crunch, because from our perspective, keeping them here in Metro Nashville, near where the jobs are, near where their kids are, is the best thing that we can possibly do. But it's really hard to do in the wake of those rising housing costs.
My reaction to the question brings me back to a couple of slides that Dr. Harper showed. One was a slide that showed not more programs, but better programs focused on what we know works, and I would agree with that. A lot of what I read about too many programs sort of inadvertently blames the victims, focuses at the individual or maybe the family level, and essentially, without meaning to perhaps, but implying that, bad parenting or people are weak or what have you. And sure enough, things happen to people that spiral them into poverty and even into homelessness. But what's causing those are generally structural and institutionally caused problems, inadequate laws and policies and programs. So I'm not knocking programs. I think some of the best programs are what you're hearing today from my colleagues up here. But one other slide that Dr. Harper showed had an age distribution, if you recall that one, and it reminded me of a slide I've seen, a graph I've seen. My colleague, Professor Beth Shin, who's a leading expert on homelessness, and it shows the age distribution among homeless people. And what would you guess is the most common age at which people are homeless? Turns out it's 0 to 2 years old. It's our babies and youngest children who are, and families essentially, who are make up the largest age segment of homeless people. And so how can you blame kids 0 to 2? It's clearly these institutions, and I'm not blaming the families either, let me stress. It's clearly institutional and systemic problems. As you can tell from the name of this forum today, the title of the forum implies that our economic and political system and laws and institutions have been created to advantage the wealthy and powerful. So we absolutely must understand and address the problem systemically and not just at the individual level.
All right, thank you. I need to take a quick break. The Deputy Mayor, Brenda Haywood, has joined us, and I think someone wants to introduce her more appropriately than I can.
Thank you. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce the history-making Honorable Deputy Mayor Brenda Haywood.
First of all, I would just like to say hello to everyone. Hi, Michelle. It's just, I consider it an honor and a pleasure to be here. When Miss Renee asked me to come, I was just simply delighted. I'm here to learn more about the conversation. I want you to know I was the first Black at Stratford High School way back in the dark ages. And now I'm the Deputy Mayor for Community Engagement and Social Services. And I don't know, you've been such a blessing to our community. When you talk about children and homelessness, you're right on target, because I can remember in from 2008 to 2013, I was a teacher at Jerry Back's Alternative. We had 80 students, and they were sleeping in class, and they were getting put out. And I said, well, let's just try to determine why they're sleeping in class. Well, 70% of those kids were homeless. That's a problem. And when you're homeless, it brings on many, many problems. So I want you to know that I am here to learn today. I'm here to partner with Miss Renee and all the wonderful work that's going on and all the services that you all are rendering. And I just want you to know that The mayor is determined. He's just determined to include all communities, that they will not only survive, that everyone here in Nashville will have the opportunity to thrive, and that's his mantra, and he is not kidding about that. Right now, he is working diligently to make sure that this is a place where everyone is included, and I certainly know what it means to be left out, and I don't want anyone left out. So I just want you to know I'm glad to be here, and I will continue to be a conduit from the mayor's office, and I thank you for all the work that you all are doing, and I just say thank you to all the work that's represented here today. May God continue to bless you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We're going to continue with a few questions related to the themes of mobility and sustainable wages. City Council just unanimously passed a covenant to guide future decisions on how public money is spent, and kind of the priorities for the community: sustainable wages, child care, affordable child care, more responsible use of public subsidies and things of that nature. But I encourage you all to look that up if you can. But it's about poverty reduction and equity. Now the challenge is, how do we make that actionable? How do we turn rhetorical homage to issues of equity and growth for communities that have been left behind or haven't prospered the way others? How do we make it a reality? How do we move forward as a community? Tough question, I know. In 2 minutes. Brian, you want to?
Well, I think having the right people in the room to talk about it is the first step. One of the things that I think we're learning at the United Way is that accessibility to the services is often challenging. So bundling the programs or providing them through the family resource centers, I think we have 7 of them, seems to be a good way to meet people where they are, so that you can help them there and not have them have to navigate the social service system, both public and private, to find the things they need. Part of it, what I hope with the ALICE project, having come here from New York, where we released the ALICE project, ALICE stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained, Employed. And we typically describe Alice as a single-parent mom with 2 children and 2 minimum wage jobs. Just almost impossible circumstances for a working mom. So one of the things that happened in New York was a number of the larger financial institutions began to recognize that their own employees were having trouble putting food on the table, having trouble taking care of their kids so they could come to work. And so childcare, daycare actually became a key rallying point, both in the legislature and amongst the American Banking Association. So we had banks literally subsidizing daycare, sometimes in their own headquarters. So I think there are things that can be done if we focus appropriately, get the right people talking about it. And I do, as I said earlier, I sense here in Nashville and in Tennessee, you have the commissioner of the Department of Human Services here today, you have the deputy mayor. People are willing to get together and work on these things. We have a wonderful social service community that I think wants to work better together. And when they do, it does get results.
Anyone else want to weigh in?
Which one? I'm excited about this community covenant, and I believe that the Metro Council is creating committees that correspond to the different covenants, and that the intent there is multiple voices will be a part of the thinking and the getting to the solutions. And that's where I really think that this authentic community engagement is so important. I mentioned co-creating solutions and not being prescriptive. I think sometimes we tend to do that. So I'm excited about that. Another thing that this brings up for me in this area is some work that we've been doing with the mayor's office and the chamber and United Way and EC and CNM. We're calling it a working title, a business toolkit. But how do businesses know how to get involved in what's going on in the community with nonprofits, with philanthropy, because we have a lot of new businesses and a lot of not just new businesses, but new people who've come in and don't know the community. And so we're working on ways that we can introduce all the great programs and services and needs that are happening in the community and getting everybody involved in that.
All right, thank you. We have some questions trickling in from the crowd, and some of these questions can be quite direct. So the first one, for Commissioner Barnes. How can we get the government, state government I'm assuming, to spend the millions in excess DHS funds to reduce poverty in Nashville and Tennessee?
We can. No, hold that, because let me be clear. I want to set the record straight. There is not a Tennessean that is not being served right now, period. If an individual qualifies for our services, they are not just receiving our services and our support, but they are also receiving wraparound services from some of our community partners. So I want to set that record straight. That was not correct in the Tennessean. But what I do want to say is, yes, we are going to wrap our arms around every single citizen that needs it. And we're going to do that by community partners. We're going to do that by exactly what I said earlier, is that we're going to get to the people who might not necessarily qualify for our roles and be direct service recipients, but that they may be providers, they may be customers, they may be clients of United Way. They may be receiving services in another nonprofit. What I ask, and again, and I cannot stress this enough, continue to ask the what if. Continue to seek new partnerships. If you come and you say, we have a program that has proven sustainable outcomes, we want to sit down and we want to talk with you. Because what we know is that if we partner together, we can serve more Tennesseans. So that's it. That's on all of us. It's on every single one of us to come to that table.
Okay, thank you. I have another question for you. All right. Some people talk about, if you want to know what public priorities are, look at public budgeting. Has your budget increased recently, and if so, by how much to cover your department's new needs?
Our budget has actually decreased over the last 5 years. We've been very diligent in terms of being conservative stewards of taxpayer dollars. What we have been is more creative in the dollars that we have. I think where Tennessee is unique is that we are not asking for additional funds, but we've been creative at finding ways to blend and weave additional federal dollars to the benefit of Tennesseans. So we have not increased our budget at all. Despite that not having our increase, we have some really creative innovations coming down the pike. We just talked earlier today about all of the things that have just come down regarding childcare, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's also some creative things coming down in terms of our vocational rehabilitation program, complete and total overhaul of vocational rehabilitation. So there are some wonderful opportunities. When I say it's an exciting time, to be able to have this kind of freedom and this kind of innovation and the partners at the table, it really is an exciting time to be able to do that.
Thank you. And one more, not to, question for someone who's trying to assist older adults aging in place, and two seniors over the age of 60 earning about $1,540 a month, but they only receive $15 a month in food stamps. What can we do, or are we doing anything to evaluate food stamp benefits to make them more realistic?
So the first thing I want to say is we will no longer use in the state of Tennessee the phrase food stamps. The people we serve need to be treated from not a deficit basis. And food stamps, to me, is a deficit basis. So we, in our department, will always use Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. We want to treat every single person we serve with dignity. and we want to treat them as if they have an asset and a dream. And I'm very, very passionate about that. So I'm going to rephrase your question to ask, is there anything we are doing about the benefits for supplemental nutrition assistance program? Unfortunately, that is a federal program, and the benefits tied to that are very federally regulated. We continue to work with our federal partners in terms of the dollar amount. However, that is not something that we have a lot of flexibility over. We have to work with our General Assembly and our federal government on that. But to be honest, where we have a little bit more flexibility is in our TANF program. And last year, for the first time in almost 20 years, we were able to increase the amount of benefits that individuals received for substantially. I just want to say that. It's almost 20% for a family of 3. So we are continuing to work. We're continuing to look at these options. We're continuing to push for the benefit of our families. But again, where I think it's really important for us to note is that every time we find ourselves hamstrung by a regulation or a legislature or the federal government, that we don't stop, that we find creative ways to get around, and we find creative ways to partner, because that's the more important story that needs to be told.
All right. Thank you for your candor and tackling those questions head on. Doug, one of the things that's come out of this is the discussion is about better data-driven solutions. We've asked the question, what works and what if, and how could we do that in a building cost-efficient and effective programs based on existing research. So what needs to change in Nashville? Is it different groups at the table? Is it different mindsets? What needs to change to make that a reality?
Well, representing academia along with you, Ken, I guess I would like to see a stronger role for the many universities in Nashville to work collaboratively together on addressing these problems related to data, but more broadly of understanding the root causes of poverty and inequality and and economic mobility constraints. And so I'm wondering if somebody could put up the last slide. I actually was a bad boy and requested a slide, and they kindly accommodated me. It's the last one in this whole batch. And it's related to a paper that I wrote a long time ago. No, back up to the table. Did you pass a table? All right, never mind. Anyway, there was a great slide on that I added. I thought I only gave them a one slide thing, but there it is. So if you're interested in this, you can either reach out to me, d.perkins@vanderbilt.edu, or you can go to my.vanderbilt.edu/Perkins, my website, and find full text of all my papers. This came from one of them, actually was indirectly a product of a project, a 2-year project I did with some colleagues and students with United Way of Middle Tennessee back when Mark Desmond was directing it in the mid-2000s. And it's an effort to try to go beyond those kind of victim-blaming, individual or family alone focused. We can't ignore individuals and families, but the solution needs to come, I think, from a better understanding and the data that Dr. Chilton asked about that is comprehensive and systematic. And so without taking the time to go through this entire complicated figure, this 3-dimensional figure, the idea behind it is that we need to understand not just poverty, but institutional racism and sexism and all other sorts of oppression or the way that we're structurally keeping people down, and understanding processes of liberation and empowerment toward goals of wellness at multiple levels, wellness at the individual and family level, but also at the group and organizational and community level on up to the whole level of our broader community of Nashville. And then finally, to look not just at it economically. One strong message I want to end with is is to say, okay, we can't ignore economics, and that's vitally important, but understand people more holistically in terms of the social context of community, or social capital in addition to economic capital, and the political context and the physical, environmental, and infrastructure needs of all our communities. And that requires, as I said earlier, looking at things in a more interdisciplinary way. And so to finally answer the question, we need to create, if not a center, because that can be expensive. I ran a center, started one that lasted for almost 10 years called the Center for Community Studies at Peabody College. And a colleague in sociology at Vanderbilt, Dan Cornfield, started a Center for Nashville Studies. Unfortunately, in both cases, they were over time defunded by Vanderbilt. But if we can't find funding for a center that would bring all these disciplines together to study and better understand and solve these problems, I think we could do so on the cheap by creating an inter-university consortium along with TSU and Belmont and Fisk and Vanderbilt and all the local universities that have a wealth of researchers and students who are studying these problems from these different disciplinary perspectives. And then the final thing is then needing access to data. One of the things I've run into that is often a challenge is cooperation in providing data. I think, not to single anybody out, but local governments sometimes may worry that an academic like myself is asking for data that would end up making them look bad, and that's not what we're really after. We're just wanting to work with local government to solve the problems, and so gaining access to the needed data is important as well.
All right, thank you. And we've got a good nexus here of academia, the nonprofit sector, the faith-based sector, the government sector. To follow up on that, Terry, what's the role of the Center of Nonprofit Management in terms of perhaps being part or jump-starting some type of consortium where different agencies share data, share information about who's getting services and things of that nature?
Right. Well, we are really excited about the possibilities of this, and I've actually had conversations with a lot of folks around town, but particularly Dr. Harper and Abdghani. We are, what I envision is if we could somehow see what the needs are and what the resources are, we'd be able to sort of overlay that on some sort of GIS. I am not a data person, y'all. You can probably figure that out right now. But I have this idea that if we could see the needs and see the resources available, we would see the gaps, we would see the duplications, we would be able to understand a lot. But it's going to take coming together and building the trust, and I guess this is what I keep talking about. We've got to build that trust so that, to your point, Doug, the intent and the use of the data is okay with everybody. And CNM is ready to take a lead role in that. We need partners. Anybody up for that?
I am. And finally, a question for Carol around economic mobility. In Nashville, it seems like certain parts of the community, the African-American community, the Hispanic community, the Kurdish community, and some of the newer American communities aren't participating is too strong a word, aren't reaping the benefits of economic development. Are your programs that you're doing reaching out to those communities to try to build new relationships to get them on the road towards prosperity or higher levels of prosperity?
One of the tenets of our program, we say there's no sustained change without sustained relationship, and relationship is really at the heart of what we do. In our program, within just a matter of days, our students come together from different political backgrounds, different socioeconomic backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds, and they become like a family. When it rains, they found out who's taking the bus, and they're picking each other up. When they need childcare for an interview, they are taking care of each other's kids. And so as a class, they form very significant bonds together that maybe cross some of the barriers that we would typically think would be barriers. They also form deep bonds with our staff and then also with their allies, with their mentors who walk alongside them. And our goal when they graduate is for them to have had or to have made 30 to 50 new relationships that sustain them on their path to a new career. And we believe it really is important for us to get out of our silos that we all naturally just sort of live in, and to get to know people that maybe we otherwise wouldn't get to know, and to care about people and learn about people that we otherwise wouldn't know about. And so that's a really significant part of our program that we have seen tremendous benefits. In fact, our last class, I have a picture that's one of my favorites, and it's an African American gentleman with his arm draped around a immigrant from Egypt. And so just people from all different walks of life are coming together in really powerful ways.
All right, thank you. Another question for the panel in general. Nashville has had several initiatives and efforts: Poverty Reduction Initiative, Nashville Next, the Nashville Agenda, most recently the Community Covenant. We in this room and we in this table tend to know these issues. We have the data, yet moving the needle is incredibly difficult. From an actionable point of view, what needs to be different? Are we not communicating properly? Are we not able to bring in the private sector in a way that resonates? What needs to be different to see real traction on the ground? And I know that's a tough question.
You know, I think the more we talk about these subjects and try to communicate the need, try to put a face on the people who need help. You know, my sense of the business community is that there is a great deal of concern about these issues. It's discussed. You mentioned Nashville's Agenda is a group I'm in that is, I think, largely a CEO group that meets quarterly, and every meeting has been about this type of change that's happening, people being left behind. How do we create more affordable housing? How do we get people to work? How do we take care of how do they take care of their children so they can work? So, you know, I'm in a few circles where this seems to be really on the minds of the corporate community. Certainly our board, which is largely a business board, is concerned. And I think the more we can convey this type of need, you know, one of the challenges I think in the world we have today is the way we consume our news. Getting these types of stories into the paper is more difficult. It's more of a social media world. So, you know, your opportunities to kind of really convey the importance of supporting, giving, volunteering. I sense that there's a real interest in these things in the business community. We certainly see it at the United Way. Even with, and I'll just mention Alliance Bernstein is brand new to town, and they've made some huge commitments, and they seem truly interested in the quality of life. So I think we have to make sure that the new companies coming to town really get on board. It can't all be HCA and Bridgestone and Alliance Bernstein. I do think the corporate community is key to this. And I believe they are interested in working with not-for-profit government, religious, and civic leaders.
I'm actually encouraged by a lot of what I've seen locally, initiatives by Metro government, as well as the private nonprofit sector, as well as many in the for-profit sector locally here to be bold in trying to tackle the problems we've talked about today. And I think we've had some excellent mayors going back quite a ways. And the council now, I think for many years, has been quite strong. When I moved here almost 20 years ago, I'm not sure the council was as conducive at that time to solving things in a bolder way. So I want to actually turn my question to Danielle and ask about the state level. In northern states, I grew up in the D.C. area in Maryland, and I've lived in New York and other places, and a lot of the rest of the country, out west as well, the states are very supportive of their largest cities, and I don't get the feeling that's quite as much the case here, at least from a legislative perspective. And so, Danielle, can you say anything about that struggle of the state's role, and is there anything to be done about legislative impediments to acting boldly?
That's a tricky question. There's lots of layers when you say local level. I would say what you are seeing right now is there's a lot of excitement about the possibilities of working together. And I think there's a lot of energy of people moving in the same direction. And I think the passion that you all saw from me, you are seeing at every single level. Because we're not just talking about a certain sector of people, we're talking about all levels of people. I think that same passion and that same energy and that same momentum is happening in the General Assembly. I think that same passion and momentum is happening with our Metro Council. And I think even though we have a new mayor and I haven't had the opportunity to sit down and talk to him, I think that passion, given what I know about his priorities, will continue as we go forward as well. Again, that's the beauty of where we are, and I think we should be clear is Tennessee is leading the nation, and I think we should just take a moment and appreciate that. When we think about the partnerships and the momentum and our efforts across serving all populations, all people, not just those that again meet our roles, but those that are just barely above our roles, or those that are just barely able to make it. You heard Brian talk about that a bit. But really getting to those that aren't thriving. They're just making it. And we have an obligation to help those folks, and that's why I get so passionate about that. Governor Lee tasked me, and I task myself every single morning with representing all Tennesseans, every single one of them, at every level, and building the state and moving the state forward. Now, I know if I feel that, and I know if the Governor Lee feels that, our legislature feels that. I know our local county feels that. And again, in a time where we are today, I think it's really important that we all recognize that those doors are open and we continue that momentum together.
Anyone else want to chime in on that one? All right. Another question that's similar to one that was asked earlier for Commissioner Barnes. Tennessee ranks 41st in the nation in terms of its poverty rate, yet our state typically spends only 30 to 40% of its federal TAMP funding. What is our state's plan to spend our $730 million reserved TAMP funds to reduce our state poverty rate so that we're not the 9th poorest state in the country?
So again, I think it's important, this is a sort of a different phrasing of the same question.
Yes.
I think you all really want to know the answer to this question. I'm feeling a little pressure here. Honestly, again, remember, we just increased the TANF allotment for the first time, right? We just did that last year. The second part of that, again, and I can't keep stressing this enough, is to get those individuals who are not on our rolls. It's those folks that fall in between, and I hate to say it, they fall in between the cracks. They are not coming to us. They are out there trying to make it. And as we talk about the opportunity in Tennessee, our opportunity is to capture those people. And that's why I get so passionate about it. So I kind of want to, I get really excited because this is an opportunity to serve everyone, to serve anyone who needs it. And so the plan, the strategy, raise your hand. Again, government is not doing this alone. When we think about the work at United Way, we think about the fact that they have invested and have proven success in homelessness initiatives. We are serving Tennesseans that need that help. When you think about some of our partnerships, one of our larger partners is Agape in Memphis. Agape, through proven outcomes, has been able to actually see a reduction in poverty in the districts that they serve by almost 7%. Now, if we're moving in that direction, these people aren't on my rolls. They're being served by people in the community. If we can all come together and think of ways to serve our communities like that, Tennessee's going to be better off, and we won't just be 41st, we'll be first.
Okay. And a follow-up to that, you mentioned capturing the people that fall through the cracks who might be getting services at smaller nonprofits and such. And that gets back to this whole concept of data disruption. The private sector, as Garrett pointed out, does a great job of tracking who you buy from, what you buy, matching it with your zip code demographics to really tailor products and services that you're most likely to buy. Getting back to the nonprofit sector, I think we have 2,000, 2,400 nonprofits in the region, so nonprofits, individuals as well. How can we use data, or how can we create the partnerships necessary that we can find those people who just need temporary assistance here or there versus those who are going to need a more intensive suite of services? How can we do a better job of using data to identify those people, and B, who needs to be at the table to make that happen?
Is that for me or who?
Well, and I would liken it. I'll use the analogy of healthcare. When I go to if I'm going to 5 different doctors and they're not communicating with one another, that's not an ideal situation.
Right. Well, I think that's the problem. I mean, that's a huge problem. I personally, me, Terry here, I don't know how to solve it, but I think it can be solved. And I think that it's a key to unlocking a lot of what we're seeing about the needle not moving. It's not only what we know about people who need services, but it's how do we help through data help and streamline the way that services are accessible, because it's really, really hard right now to get help. You have to go in so many different directions, and I love the Family Resource Center model, and we need more of that kind of thing. But as far as the data, Doug, do you have a thought of how we could get all this organized and make it happen? Because I'm totally on board.
I don't have any magic bullet, unfortunately. I wish I was the data czar that could make it happen overnight. I do think that a lot could be done. I'll repeat. I mentioned disciplinary silos in my earlier response. There's also, unfortunately, I think, a little bit too much institutional siloing where this is the first I've actually met Ken, and given what he does and our overlapping interests, we probably should have met a long time ago. So bringing universities together to share data and share expertise, and importantly, work with state and local governments and the nonprofit sector and community organizations and community leaders, I think where necessary to maybe put pressure. I was actually thinking to go ahead and name names of the difficulty I had in getting police crime data. So it was some criminal justice focused youth violence prevention research that I was doing about 10 years ago. And maybe, hopefully things have changed, but at that time it was very difficult to get police crime data. And I think the same may be true in other areas. So pressures needed to be put on the institutions that hoard the data sometimes, but I'm encouraged that certainly the people here seem very anxious to share and work together on using data effectively to better understand and address these problems. And one last thing, my question to the Commissioner wasn't to blame Tennessee state departments. I pointedly felt like it was legislative impediments to Nashville doing what we sometimes want to do. And one of the things I had in mind there was that it took a tremendous amount for Nashville citizens, not just the government, but Nashville citizens to pass and approve a resolution to have inclusionary zoning for affordable housing, which is done all over the country, and it was the state legislature that roadblocked that and made it impossible, and it could have made a big difference.
I would just add that I think this data gap, as someone who's running a relatively small nonprofit with boots on the ground, is one of the biggest issues that we face. people, none of us are alone in the efforts that we're undertaking. We're all comprehensively working together. Uprise may be doing its thing in the career development role, but we have tons of partners, even sitting in this room, who make what we do possible every single day. And sometimes efforts are wasted or they're duplicated because when a student comes to us, we don't know what's already been done. We don't know what they've already tried. And so having that information, that shared data would make an enormous difference. And this is a bit of an imprecise analogy, but when I was in the U.S. Attorney's Office, I was there during 9/11, and one of the biggest things that government did when they looked at the aftermath of that is they said, hey, we aren't sharing information. Local law enforcement didn't know what the CIA knew. The CIA didn't know what the FBI knew. And in an odd way, we find ourselves in a similar situation here when we're talking about poverty alleviation efforts. There is so much that's being done, and as boots on the ground, we don't necessarily know what's been done, what's worked for this individual, what may not work for this individual. And so I see this as a critical aspect of our growth in this area.
Okay, thank you. And that brings us kind of full circle to Garrett's presentation about the systemic issues. We're all in our own silos. And I was not asked to do this, so I'm probably overstepping my bounds, but perhaps with people at this table, there are other gatekeepers of data, metro schools, and I know there are privacy issues, and I know that there are concerns when you're dealing with mental health data, but maybe that's something that can come out of this with Metro Social Services in the lead, bringing together academics, Center for Nonprofits, United Way, large organizations that can perhaps create some type of a task force on digital disruption for systemic poverty issues or social mobility or economic mobility. I'd be willing to do that. I can't commit my university, but me as a faculty member, I would be. And I think most of the folks here at the table as well. So if we could leave here with something concrete, that might be a good outcome. I think we have one additional question. All right. Okay, thank you. 2020 will be a critical year of our community regarding the U.S. Census. Can you speak to the importance to complete the census count and the impact on economic mobility in Nashville? And are you aware of any measures by community groups who could be disproportionately impacted by low counts? Do we have efforts in place to really jumpstart that?
There are some efforts being developed. There isn't public funding available for, I think, communicating the importance of census, particularly to traditionally undercounted communities. There are a number of private funders that are talking about pooling some resources to make sure that we can fund, I guess, outreach efforts that would ensure that people know that it's important to be counted. I think that'll evolve pretty quickly. We're participating in that and are hopeful, that'll make a difference.
We were also working to be sure that the nonprofits in our members and in the area know the importance to get the word out to their groups. And I see Clifton Harris with the Urban League here. I know you're working on this pretty hard. And so there's a lot going on, but I think we're just getting it all organized.
Okay. All right, well, thank you. And I would ask everyone to join me in giving a round of applause to our panelists.
Thank you. We have received more questions than time permits to answer, but here is what we would like to do. We will keep all questions and send them to the panel, a member that was addressed to these questions, so they will have a chance to read that. Also, make sure that you fill the surveys, because as we said, those responses will be sent to the Metro Council. As you all know that local government funds education almost $1 billion. Our transportation system our land use, whether we can build affordable housing or not build affordable housing, that is up to the local government. We don't have to ask Washington about that. So please, those surveys are very important. As you all heard today, you heard much about data, analytics, collective impact, and equity. As we all know that we cannot address economic mobility without focusing on our education system, because that is the way to get to the workforce. So if we don't invest equitably, and I say equitably again, because if you look at most of the wealthy disparities that exist in Nashville, you can trace back to education, you can trace back to neighborhoods, you can trace back to transportation, and you can trace back to land use. We have known the history in North Nashville about redlining and all kinds of things that now we call it gentrification and all these kind of things. That has started long time ago. And we cannot address mobility without addressing our education system and the impact our local government investments have on our communities. Can anybody in this room believe really that Hillsborough High School and Pearl Cone receive the same resources? I don't think so. But also data is very important. We know the latest number, 103,240 people live below the poverty level in Davidson County. However, what we don't know is that when we break down into those, we don't know who they are. There could be teachers, police officers, other civil servants, people who work in the hotels, and every industry. But if we had a data that we collected, just like the grocery stores do, because as soon as you give them and they try to check on that, they already know what you buy. They send you coupons, and they know what time you buy. But for us, what we don't know is that there is a possibility, I'm not saying that's the number, perhaps 13,000 people that go from 5 or 6 metro government agencies the same day and go into a family resource center, and perhaps at the end of the day, go to Second Harvest Food Bank. We don't know that. If we had a GPS attached to people, which is difficult to do it, but if we only use their cell phone numbers, and we look at that and navigate and see where they end up, we could see the frequency and the magnitude of poverty that exists in Nashville. Right now, we don't know that, and I don't understand why we don't embrace technology. If the private sector is doing so well in embracing technology, I think repeating and saying that we need more programs, I don't think so. Unless we know the efficiency of the programs that we have. And that's why we wanted this to be a community conversation that's intended to see, let us not just keep doing the same thing we've been doing for a long time. It's time to have some serious conversation about Nashville. And as I started earlier, after the best economy Nashville has had, the lowest unemployment rate, the best jobs in the country coming to Nashville, we still have 25,000 people in poverty today than we had before the recession. So we need to ask those kind of critical questions. African Americans in this town account for 27% of the population. Perhaps African American women is about 15%, but they happen to be 71% of the women coming to Metro Social Services. Something is structurally not right. And I think this is where we start in the conversation. And whatever you express in those surveys, that's what we will share with our Metro Council and our leaders so that they will look into solutions that work for the community. There were some questions about the Chamber of Commerce and other organizations. It's not fair to ask the panel because they don't work for those organizations, so I didn't want to do that. Here is the thing. We will continue and have more conversations and more forums about this issue. But what's necessary is that if we don't look into data, if we don't look into collective impact, if we don't look about equity, that matters the most. Public investments in transportation, education, housing, land use, That's very serious about it. We just don't want to look back 20 years from now and still say, oh, North Nashville, unemployment rate is 13%, while the county is 2.6%. If you're all familiar with Napier neighborhood of Lafayette Street, there is a census tract that unemployment rate is 36%, while the countywide unemployment rate is now 2%. That makes no sense. So what we are trying to do is that, and we appreciate your time, is to be part of this conversation about data and equity and economic mobility. Because if you're making $10 an hour, I'm not sure if you can find a place you can afford in Nashville. And many sectors, that's what the wage is. So in concluding this, please complete the survey and share with us, because that's an important tool that we report back to the City Council. Also, we would like to encourage collaboration. It's impossible, as I said it. There's an individual that can start at the Career Center in the morning, will come to social services, go to Metro Action, and then end up at MDHA again, and then go back to Second Harvest Food Bank the same day, because we see the problems of the people we serve are so deep. Therefore, if we can all come up with a better system of sharing data, I'm not talking about names. I know privacy is a sensitive thing, but in the world of research, if we want to advance the economic and social well-being of 200,000 people living in Nashville, data and technology would be the first initiative that we can all agree on that is going to benefit, regardless of your color, your race, or nationality, or language that you speak, as long as we are all in Nashville. Again, I would like to thank you for your precious time that you spent this morning to share with us and join the panel. Please complete the survey, and you can tell us how we can do better things in the future. But again, we would like to thank you for your time.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information about this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.